Ben had always liked quiet. After years of renting and the city buzzing lights, stomping neighbors, and sirens slicing the night, finally found what he called his peace, a modest, aging house tucked at the edge of a sleepy street. It wasn't fancy. The wood creaked in the hallways. The porch had seen better paint jobs, but it was his, and it was quiet, or so he thought. 2 weeks in, he was finally settling into his new life. The first floor had been swept, painted, rearranged. The second floor, though still dusty, had a charm that made him smile. But then there was the attic. He hadn't paid it much attention. During the house tour, the attic had been an afterthought, dark, small, unimportant. He hadn't even climbed into it before buying the place. Now, though, with boxes needing a home, it was time to explore. The foldable ladder groaned under his weight as Ben made his way up. The wooden rungs were dry and splintered. The air changed as his head crossed into the attic cooler, somehow denser. He pushed the hatch upward and hoisted himself into the dim space above. Dust hung thick in the air like old breath. Sunlight filtered weakly through a cracked vent, barely illuminating the space. Cobwebs laced the corners. The boards beneath his feet moaned as he stepped carefully across them, avoiding the gaps. Then he saw it. Tucked between two beams near the far end was something pale and strange. At first, it looked like a lump of insulation, curled and matted like an animal's forgotten nest. But as Ben stepped closer, crouching carefully, he realized it wasn't just one. There were two, identical, perfectly round, soft-looking, yellowish-white, with curls that seemed too deliberate, too structured to be insulation. He didn't touch them. Instead, he took out his phone and snapped a picture. Maybe one of his friends would know what it was. Something about the objects made him uneasy. It wasn't fear, exactly just a quiet discomfort that clung to him as he climbed back down and shut the attic door. He didn't place anything up there that day. He didn't want to. Not yet. Instead, Ben sent the picture to Marco, his roofer. Marco was a no-nonsense guy with a thick mustache, weathered hands, and a habit of diagnosing roof issues just by tapping on the wall. They'd scheduled repairs for next week, but this he couldn't wait. Marco didn't answer his phone at first, but after seeing the picture, everything changed. Silence. Then, urgency. "I'll be there in 10. 9 minutes later, Marco's old red van squealed into the driveway. He didn't say hello, just walked past Ben and headed straight upstairs. Ben unfolded the attic ladder. Marco climbed slowly but deliberately. The moment his head rose through the opening, he froze. He didn't move forward. He didn't crack a joke. He simply asked, "Are there more?" "No, just those two." Marco crouched near one of the objects, examining it closely but not touching it. Then he stood up and said something that made Ben's stomach tighten. "I've worked on a lot of old houses, seen nests, mold, even wild animals, but I've never seen this." He pulled a flashlight from his belt and shined it into the cluster. Then, pulling on gloves, he carefully picked one up. "Put on gloves," he said to Ben. "Don't touch it bare." Ben obeyed. Marco transferred the strange object into his hands. It was lighter than expected, soft, a little spongy. As he turned it over, something inside shifted. A tiny black bead dislodged and fell to the floor, bouncing once before, rolling into the shadows. They both stared at it. It pulsed. Ben swore it twitched-moved on its own. Marco exhaled sharply. "That's not insulation, and it's not natural. Someone put these here." Ben tried to speak, but his mouth was dry. Marco took the object back, placed it down, and stood. "I've got a guy. Name's Jordan. He's dealt with this before. Biocontamination, mold, pest control. He's seen strange things, I'll call him." Ben nodded. Marco hesitated at the hatch. "How much did you pay for this place?" $200 grand, Ben replied. "Why?" Marco's face changed. He didn't answer right away. Then he muttered something that made Ben's blood run cold. "So they got you too," Marco didn't explain further. "Don't stay here tonight," he said. "And whatever you do, don't touch those things again." Ben didn't argue. He packed a small bag and went to stay at his neighbor's house across the street. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he turned his head, his eyes wandered to the window. From the guest room, he could see his own attic window, dark and still, but he knew what was behind it. The image of that black bead haunted him. He pulled up the photo on his phone again. This time, zooming in carefully, he noticed something else, something he had missed before. A mist, faint, barely visible. But there, a fine cloud around the object. The next morning, Marco called. "My friend's name is Jordan. He'll be there at noon. Just keep that attic closed." Ben paced his yard restlessly until the blue pickup arrived. A tall man in his 40s stepped out, wearing a thick jacket and gloves. No tools, just a silver case. Marco followed behind him. They barely spoke. Jordan asked only one thing. Did anything touch your skin? The mist? The bead? No, I don't think so. Jordan nodded. They climbed into the attic. This time, Ben didn't follow. He watched from the ladder. Jordan knelt beside one of the objects and used long tweezers to pierce its surface. Instantly, black beads tumbled out more than a dozen. They scattered across the attic floor. And then they moved. Not all at once, not in unison, but individually and with intent. Some rolled uphill, some jerked side to side. One even circled back toward the vessel it came from. A few tumbled down the open hatch. Ben flinched. Jordan stood. "You're lucky," he said. "These things aren't meant to kill. They're meant to drive you insane." Ben stared, confused. "What do you mean?" "They're attractants, behavioral triggers. Something in the mist tit makes pests lose control." Marco stepped forward. "We've seen this before. A few times. Always the same kind of houses. Always just after sale. And always cheap." Ben's breath caught. Jordan began removing attic panels. Behind them, dozens more vessels. The entire attic had been seeded. But it didn't stop there. Ben stood frozen on the ladder, gripping the top rung like it was the only thing anchoring him to reality. What Jordan had just revealed didn't make sense. Who would fill an attic with things like this? Objects designed not to harm directly, but to attract pests, infest homes, and unravel sanity one night at a time. Jordan continued dismantling the ceiling, while Marco carefully swept the fallen beads into a sealed container. Behind each wooden panel, more vessels were revealed tucked neatly between beams, fixed into place as if planted with care. Each one housed the same fibrous outer shell and the same dense fog of mist curling faintly in the stale attic. Air. "This house was rigged," Marco said grimly. "Rigged before it ever hit the market." "But why?" Ben asked, his voice strained. Marco turned to him. "You paid $200,000 for this place, right?" Ben nodded. Jordan spoke now, calmly but firmly. "That's half of what it's worth. You got the deal of the century, but that deal was the bait." They began to explain. This wasn't just mold. This wasn't just a freak infestation. This was a paterna system. Over the past 5 years, Marco and Jordan had seen 6 homes like this. Always old houses, always priced just low enough to seem like a lucky break, and always sold to eager buyers looking for peace and a fresh start. The vessels in the attic, they said, were designed to release timed waves of scent and mist. The black beads, barely the size of marbles, emitted a synthetic compound engineered to attract rodents, specifically rats. They drove pests into frenzies, made them chew, dig, scratch through anything. The result? Complete infestation, but not immediate over time. Once the homeowner was overwhelmed, exhausted, and desperate, a buyer would appear disguised as a friendly face from the same company that sold the house in the first place. They'd offer to buy it back for half the price. Most owners, beaten down by weeks of sleepless nights and financial stress, accepted the deal, and just like that, the house was returned. The company cleaned up the evidence and resold it again to a new victim. "But this time," Marco said, "they got careless. We caught them before they made the offer." Ben's stomach churned. "You're saying they were going to scare me out of my own home, then buy it back for a profit?" "Exactly," Jordan replied. "They've done it before, and without proof, no one listened. But this time was different, because Marco and Jordan had recorded everything. They photographed each vessel, sealed each black bead in specimen jars, documented every mist sample, every panel removed, every corner exposed. And then came the final reveal. Behind the largest support beam, they found a manufacturer's label burned lightly into the wood. Not a standard construction stamp, but a custom serial number and emblem. It matched the name of the real estate development company that sold Ben the house. "That's your link," Marco said. "That's your proof." Ben stared at the mark. A clean, neat brand, like someone had signed their trap with pride. Jordan nodded. "Let's call the authorities." By late afternoon, 2 men in dark jackets arrived. Not local police federal investigators. Marco had contacted them directly. They had been tracking the company for over a year, but had never caught them red-handed, until now. The agents carefully collected the evidence. They asked Ben to explain everything from the beginning, and he did, voice shaking but steady. When it was over, one of the agents shook his hand. "You may have just saved a lot of people," he said. Within days, the story hit the news. Real estate scam exposed. Homes infested on purpose to force sales. Biotech devices used to control pest behavior in illegal property scheme. Ben's photo wasn't in the papers, but he was the unnamed homeowner mentioned in every article, the one whose discovery had brought it all down. The company executives were arrested. Homes were inspected. Other victims came forward. Lawsuits followed. Some houses were condemned. Others were cleaned and returned to their rightful owners. And Ben? He was offered a full refund, but he refused it. With support from Marco and Jordan and funding provided through a victims' compensation fund, he cleaned the house from top to bottom. Every panel replaced, every beam restored. The attic was cleared, sealed, and aired. And for the first time since moving in, Ben stepped up into the attic and found it empty.